Hey guys, today we're in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 13. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 13 is really divided into three sections, and they're all kind of the same, just the people changes. It talks about just an Israelite, it talks about a family member, and it talks about a whole city. And the whole point is, remember, we're in this section of how should Israel worship. And so God started this idea warning against idolatry and warning of going to these pagan religions that were surrounding them as they were going to enter the promised land. And now chapter 13 comes and we see the seriousness of what God means. He says this. If a prophet or a dreamer rises among you, they show you a sign or a wonder, they do something special, and they say, let's go serve another God. He says, you shall not listen to those words, and they shall be put to death. So we can see here, God says, okay, if somebody does a sign, a miracle, a wonder, something miraculous, but they take you away from God, it's definitely not me. And so they shall be put to death. In verse 6, it says, if a brother, a son of your mother, a son of your daughter, a wife that you embrace, a family member, a relative, if they secretly lead you and say, let's go serve another God, it says, you shall not yield to him, you should not listen to him, and you shall kill them. It actually says you should be the first to kill them. So once again, if somebody leads you away from God, it is not of God. They should be put to death. And then in verse 12, it starts with a city, right? If anyone of your cities hears and they're talking about this and they say that they should go serve other gods, God says you should inquire, you shall make search, and you shall ask diligently. When it's one person that you hear says something, you know what it means. But when it's a large group of people, you got to get in there and figure it out. You got to make sure exactly what they're stating and who's all involved. So you should inquire, you shall search, you shall ask diligently. But if it is true, it says that you shall devote it to destruction. You shall burn the city and all of its spoils, everything that's in it, not take any of the spoils, and it shall be a heap forever. It shall never be built on again. So we can see here in this idea of worship, when God says, I am alone are worthy to be worshiped, that you should destroy everything else, we can see the seriousness of God. Now, as we read this in our American mind frame, we think, wow, is that stretching it? Here's the point. Go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve eat of the fruit. They mess up. Sin comes into their life. And God kicks them out of the garden. There's many that would say that was mean of God that he would kick them out of the garden. He kicked them out of the garden, not just to be a punishment, but so that they would not live forever separated from God. If they stayed in the garden, they could eat of the tree of eternal life. They would live forever and be forever separated from God, not knowing him, thus living in hell. So God, in his wisdom and in his love, kicked them out so that they would die. They couldn't live forever. But in the terms of finding out how bad things are, it would bring them back to the love of God. God is doing the same thing. He's saying, as you enter into the promised land, there's all kinds of foreign gods and temples and idols and everything, but you must be singularly focused on me, Yahweh. And if somebody's not focused on me, they need to die. You're like, man, that's terrible. What happens is one bad apple spoils the bunch. And so if one person, right, says, I want to go follow another God, but in the circumstance, what happens? The friend, the family member, an Israelite says, hey, Let's go worship another God. They're pulling other people away from salvation and pulling them away from salvation to destruction. And so God says, if somebody's not following God, it's better that they would be destroyed than that they would lead another person, 5 people, 10 people, a family, a city, a nation away from God, which they would never hear the salvation message of God. And so that's why we have that. So when God says, hey, you need to be singularly focused on me, he's doing it out of love because it's the focus on God that brings salvation. And if they are hanging around people who are not focused on God, they will not come into salvation. They will come into destruction. And so that's why God is saying, if you come across somebody, destroy them, destroy them. It's better to destroy one than destroy 10. It's better to destroy 10 than destroy 10,000. Does that make sense? I hope that does. And so we just see the point of how serious God is. When he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, he means it. And it's a directive to Israel to say, to give the accountability that they need to say, hey, if I don't love the Lord my God with all my heart, my mind, my soul, and my strength, I'm going to fall into pagan worship. I'm going to pull other people away and I will be destroyed. I will be killed. I will be cut off. And so this shows us the seriousness of God and his holiness, because that which is holy cannot be around that which is unholy. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 14. God bless.